Hey guys, today we are going to take you step by step on how to install a Minn Kota PowerDrive BT bow mount on this particular fishing boat. In the installation instructions on page 6, it'll give you the necessary tools and resources required to do this project, and I'll read them off to you. You'll need a number 3 and a number 2 Phillips screwdriver. You'll need a drill, a 9/32 drill bit, a 7/16 box end wrench, and a person to help you with the installation. So in the installation process of this particular motor, we're going to be using a Minn Kota quick release bracket. It's model MKA16-3. So the quick release bracket is a 2-part system consisting of 2 plates. We got a top plate, which will mount to the bottom of the motor, and then we got the base plate, which is gonna mount to the bow of the boat. All right, it'll only go on one way properly. One way to keep in mind is when you're installing the motor onto the boat, it's going to slide from the inside out. And there's also a stop on the top plate, which will prevent the unit from sliding off the front. So we're going to take that top plate and mount it to the bottom of the trolling motor. But in order to do that, we first need to remove the 2 side plates off of this motor. Simply 2 number 3 head Phillips screws. We're going to pop those off and expose the mounting holes in the bottom of this trolling motor. Right, so now that we got our side plates off, you'll see a number of holes in the base plate of this trolling motor, and 6 of them in here. In the instruction manual, you'll see it requires only using a minimum of 4, which we'll use. And when I do it, when I mount the motor, one thing to be aware of, if you have the motor too far forward on the base plate, you'll notice when the motor comes to be deployed and pivots up, the drive housing is going to hit the base plate of the quick release bracket and it isn't going to lock into place. So a good rule of thumb is to use the forward or the inwardmost hole in the trolling motor with the furthest out hole of the base plate. And that'll give you enough clearance up on the front for the whole mechanism to lock down into place. So the way I like to mount the base plate to the motor is I'll tip it up on its side, and then I use a block of wood just to prop it up a little bit. Otherwise we're fighting the base plate and the top of the bench and the motor and everything else. It just kind of makes it a little bit easier to prop that up. So we'll line up our holes, and I'll simply throw one in the bottom here. Then I'll just finger tight it and just get it started. With those just finger tightened, I'll flip the motor over and do the same thing to the other side. Okay, so now we got everything finger tightened. We're going to go ahead and use a 7/16 impact, 7/16 box end wrench and tighten everything up. So with the base plate now securely fastened to the trolling motor, we can lay it back down on the bottom and put our side plates back on. Now we're going to go ahead and slide the top plate into the bottom plate. Put our locking nut in to secure the 2 plates together, and we'll pick it up and we'll set it on the top of the bow of the boat, and we'll start sizing it up for mounting. So a couple things to keep in mind when you're placing the trolling motor up on the front is number 1, you have the trailer bow roller. On certain instances and certain landings, or if you get your boat in the water too deep before you unhook the bow strap, that bow roller could come up and damage the front of the trolling motor. So kind of a rule of thumb, eye that down. and just kind of run up the way that bow roller would run up the front of the boat and avoid mounting it on top of that. Okay, the other thing to keep in mind is any light sockets. Okay, it's not in the way now, but if we use the quick release bracket to take the top off, that might become an issue. So we're going to check that out quick. And it is a little obstructive right there, so we're going to have to maybe slide it inward just a hair. The other thing to keep in mind is the head of the trolling motor. I always like to keep it inside of the gunnel, at least an inch if possible. And the reason for that is if you have it sticking outside of the gunnel, and you come up to a dock with high posts, there's a good chance one of those dock posts could damage the head of the motor. So keep that inside of the gunnel, and then make sure our bow roller is clear up in front for the bottom of the trolling motor, and also any light sockets or anything else that's up on the deck are avoidable when we're taking it off using the quick release bracket. The way I like to mark the location of my quick release bracket once I have it set in place is to run just a piece of masking tape down the side, representing the outer edge of the lower base plate. Then I'll just take a magic marker and put a tick mark where the front of the base plate goes. So I have my side, I have my front, I can take everything out and then bump the plate up to our tape, mark our holes, and go ahead and drill them. So that's the location we want our base plate mounted. Next thing, I'll mark the holes, and then you always want to check underneath for any obstructions. Everything there looks clear, so we'll go ahead and mark our holes and drill them out. We had two hardware packs that we opened up. One was with a quick release bracket, the other one came with the motor itself. We're going to go ahead and use the hardware pack that came with the motor itself. A couple reasons why. Number one, we have these rubber spacers or shims. We also have stainless steel hardware in here. In this particular installation, these shims are just a little bit of, will give us a little bit of vertical space on the mounting, and the reason I want to use them is because when you slide that top plate off of the bottom plate, we have this light socket yet, and we need a little bit more clearance just to avoid hitting the top edge of this light socket. So we're going to go ahead and line these up over the holes we just drilled. I'm going to put our quick release bracket on it. And then we're going to insert our stainless steel screws. One thing you can use to help you is to line up your rubber spacers with the holes. Use a, right now I'm using a long drill bit, or a small diameter screwdriver will work also. But you want to make sure that you're catching the hole on the rubber spacer as you're inserting the screw. Next thing, we're going to be using 4 fender washers and 4 of these stainless nylocks. Because we're going stainless to stainless, I always like to use a little bit of anti-seize, and to avoid any gulling, which would happen is if you're using like an impact driver or you're tightening them too tight, these two will actually seize together, and the only way to get them apart is to break it off. So a little bit of anti-seize goes a long way, and just makes the installation a little bit easier. So you can do it one of two ways. You can either put it on the bottom of the threads, or put it on the threads on the fastener, or just fill the nut up. And I'm just going to put it inside the nut here and get them all pre-rigged. Now I'll go underneath and start each one and just finger tighten them. Now that they're all finger tightened, I'm going to grab my impact that has a number 3 Phillips tip on it, my 7/16 ratchet, and I'm going to tighten everything up. So with that tightened up, we're ready to slide our trolling motor on. So So this thumb screw will fasten the two plates together. Okay, there's also, you'll notice there's a slot right here. And what that is kind of an area to put a padlock if you need anything for some sort of theft protection or to get something more secure. So that completes the installation of the actual motor to the front of the boat. So out of the box, the prop shaft is protected by this plastic sleeve, which is held on by the prop nut. So we're going to remove that, which we'll be reusing. There's also a red washer on here, which is more of a spacer. We'll discard that and then take that spacer off of there. On the inside of the prop, you'll notice a groove. That's going to align with the drive pin that's already installed. We'll go ahead and put that in place. We'll slide our washer on. Add a bit of anti-seize to the thread on that prop shaft. And we'll go ahead and put the nut back on. It's a 1/2 inch nut, so now we'll tighten it up. And you'll feel it bottom out. And once it bottoms out right there, okay, the prop is installed. So one thing to mention on this particular motor, you'll notice there's 2 wires running down the coil cord. One of them is a wire for your iPilot. The controller is up in the head, and one of the wires is a communication wire that goes to where you would normally plug a foot pedal in. We mentioned earlier you cannot use a foot pedal with a PowerDrive motor that has iPilot, and that's because the iPilot controller on the head actually takes the place of the foot pedal, and that's this connection right here. The other wire running down here is a universal sonar extension cable with a 4-pin plug on it. Okay, this will hook up to any compatible fish finder with the appropriate adapter. This particular boat does not currently have a fish finder mount on the front, so we're just going to coil it up nicely, zip tie it, and put it away for later. So that completes the installation of the Minn Kota PowerDrive BT on the front of this boat, using my tips and tricks and methods. Again, if you have any questions, make sure you refer to the instructions that come with the motor.